So let's just clarify things now that we're here on arrays and using the different kinds of loops. I don't think we used much in terms of while loops with the arrays yet, but we're gonna get there for sure. First off, declaring arrays. You're gonna do them in a couple of different ways, and it can be a little tricky, but it's not that big of a deal if you understand how. What makes something an array is you need data type, so string, right, or int, and then you just need the array symbol. And then you got to give it a name. It's just like anything else. It needs a unique identifier. Usually for most of your lab exercises, it's going to be words or numbers, right? Pretty simple. So you need data type. Make sure you put the array symbol and then unique identifier. Okay? So if you declared them inside your main, you probably set them equal to something. Any array that you're going to do, just keep in mind that standard arrays in Java have a static size and a static data type. So you can't switch from string to int, and you can't grow or shrink the size of the array. So if I give it, so whenever I declare it or whenever I initialize it, I have to set the size of it right then and there, right? Same thing with numbers. New int array, and that's going to be 5 as well. Don't forget your semicolons. So the other thing is, a lot of these I'm asking you to do instance variables, right? So when you declare one of these as an instance variable, it kind of works the same way that it does with any other kind of instance variable, but it can be a little tricky if you don't know exactly how to do it. Basically, up here where you declare all your other instance variables, just that. And then here we initialize. Same thing with numbers. Oops. I have to copy that. Put a semicolon and then numbers. And that's it. Are we clear so far?
So you can do either?
You can do either one. If I tell you to use an instance variable in the lab instructions, use an instance variable. It'll make the rest of your life easy. Because if you're going by the instructions, usually it's set up so that following those instructions is a ton easier if you decide right then and there between instance variables and passing through parameters. Okay? It's an access question. So if I tell you, hey, make an instance variable here, that means you're probably going to have a method down here that you're going to need to access that. And if you declare it, or if you declare inside the main, you won't have access. Okay. So looping. Let's say I wanted to print. So some of the things I'm going to want you to know ahead of time by the time you get to the labs, right? That I'm going to want to not have to completely fully explain to you in detail is something like printing out the items in the array. Okay? Really not that difficult a task, and if you kind of pay attention to what's going on in the actual lesson, you pretty much get the idea, but we're going to go through it. You have to use a for loop to print the array. Some of you guys, if I say print or system out print line words, right? And I run this. Let's see. I'm doing Python. There we go. It's going to give me an error. Oh, so I forgot static. Don't forget static. We're going to get over that pretty soon. After we do arrays, we're going to start doing objects, and that static's going to go away. So here, whoops, what do I do now? Dude, can I please, will you please work? All right. So whenever you try to print an array directly, you're going to get that, which is hash code. Hash code is what you get. It's a default print function that's built into the object, or basically any object in Java has a built-in function that if you print it directly, it gives you that hash code. So we have to tell it we can't print it directly because it doesn't have that functionality built into it. So what we have to do is this. First of all, let's give it some values. So a couple of times in here I've asked you to enter values into your arrays using a for loop. And that's pretty easy. I've already set up my scanner, right? And I've created a scanner object called keyboard. You set up a for loop, right? Int I equals 0. So you start from 0 and then go less than, let's say, words.length. Remember also that length in the object of array is an instance variable. So that means that it doesn't need the parentheses. When you're dealing with strings, the length function is actually a method inside the object string. So when you call it, you're actually calling a method. So you have to put those parentheses. Not the case with arrays. It's one of the instance variables in that object. Yes.
So if you say words.length, it doesn't go off of I, but the array starts printing in like 0 to 4, right?
So notice I say less than, right? So it means that it will not include the last digit or the last number. So then we're going I++, right? So inside of here, what we can do is set words at position I equal to keyboard.next. And if we want to be fancy about it, which we 100% do at all times, you guys know how fancy I am. What I want to do is I want to set up a user prompt that makes sense. So I'm going to say system out print line, let's say please enter word, and then I can say plus I plus 1. So the reason I'm doing that is so it'll go please enter word 1, please enter word 2. I have to add 1 because I is going to start at 0 and go to 1 less than the length, right? But I don't want to prompt for that on that scale. I want to prompt from 1 to the length instead of 0 to 1 less. So when I'm actually doing it in text, I'll just add 1 to it. So now, if I run this, it's going to say please enter word 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're done. Okay? Printing ends up being the part that's tricky, and I'll basically break it down and make it simple. If you're just printing out the values in the array itself, all you have to do is you can use the enhanced for loop, right? So I know that my array has strings in it, so I'm going to say for each string, right? Basically, the enhanced for loop says for each string starting at 0 in words, I'm going to do a thing. And I have to give that string a temporary variable, and I'll just call it word. So it's basically saying for each string in words, give it the variable name word temporarily, and go through all of them that exist inside the array words. And in this case, I'm just going to system printing word. Now, the variable name is not important. This is not important. I could call it that, right? As long as I reference that when I go to print it out, everything's fine. For now, I'm going to go word in words. So if I do this, and here, instead of doing print line and printing them line by line, you can also do print and just add a little space in between. and then at the end, probably add another space here, just so that everything's spaced out. So if I do this, and say A, B, C, D, E, and it prints it out in a straight line, right? If I want to do anything else but print each value in the array in successive order, I can't use the enhanced for loop. All the enhanced for loop does, again, the only thing it does is go from 0 to the length by 1, step by step by step. Okay? So if I wanted to do everything different, like say I wanted to do every other word, I'd have to use a regular for loop. And let's say I start at 0, less than words.length, and I want to go by 2s. Whoops. Words at position I can't just use word anymore, right? Because I don't have an explicit variable for that. I have to reference words at position I, and then I'll just add a little space in between to make it pretty. So if I say this, let's just go print on this one. And this one printed every other word, right? So again, if you're doing anything else but going one by one by one by one, you can't use the enhanced for loop. The enhanced for loop is just simple. I'm going to print out what's in my array, or I'm going to do something with what's in my array, like check values or something like that. The other thing, I want to reiterate that you guys should really be paying attention to what's going on here and how we enter values into an array. The reason why is because kind of the entire point of making an array is because the other option here is that I would have to create 5 string variables and enter values into each one of those. The advantage of having an array is that I have one variable called words, and then I reference each of those values by the index. I no longer have to have a separate variable for each one. It saves time for you, and it saves memory in the computer. Make sense? Okay, let me know if we have questions.